Hey, hello, we're here at the Questionable Botanist. I'm Frank McDonough from the Arboretum of Los Angeles County, and I was just showing some pictures here of different things that you can see at the Los Angeles Fern and Rare Plant Society Show and Sale. And these are Venus flytraps. Very beautiful specimens. They're for sale at in the vendor section, which is outside. Now, inside the airs hall, we have all kinds of neat specimens of different rare and exotic plants. Here is this is Don Elkins from Mesa Exotic Plants, and he sells all kinds of carnivorous plants. The one he's holding there is a pitcher plant. Now, this is a type of pitcher from North America, the Sarsinia. There are about 3 or 4 different types of pitcher plants. We have a display of one type, Nepenthes, which are native to Indonesia, Australia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, that area in Southeast Asia. And these are native to North America. These require full sun, and they require to be outside. They need lots of air circulation, and they really need deionized water. If you use regular drinking water or tap water, they suffer because of it. So if you're going to buy these things, remember that a lot of these require special care. Talk to Don. He'll tell you how to take care of them. Isn't this a neat picture? This looks like a forest in the tropics. It's actually a close-up of a fern that is in a basket, and I don't have the name of the fern. Maybe a polypodium. But doesn't it look like a forest there? A lot of great photo opportunities there. In this, let me show you, this I showed you before. I'm going to show it to you again. This vendor here is selling all different types of staghorn ferns. And like I said before, if you have a staghorn fern, or if you're going to buy one of these staghorn ferns, remember they can get quite large, so keep that in mind. A lot of people, when their staghorn ferns get 8-9 feet across, no longer like them anymore and put them up for adoption. It's a sad thing. Staghorn rescue is an ongoing fact of life for many botanical institutions, so please, please, if you're going to adopt one of these plants, make sure that you have one that's the right size. There are many different size staghorns, many different varieties. Ask the vendor there what would be right for you. We went on a field trip, the volunteers from Plant Information and also people who decided to attend my Plant Information class, which is first Tuesdays of the month, and we're going to be switching dates come this fall to the second Tuesday of the month, but until then it's first Tuesday for the next couple of months. And it's open to anybody who wants to attend class. Sometimes we go on field trips. We went on a field trip to the Arlington Gardens, which Arlington Gardens are a resident, I guess you call it local resident maintained and designed garden in Pasadena. This is corner of Arlington and Pasadena, near the corner of Arlington and Orange Grove. And it's maintained, and it was brought about mostly by volunteers. And these two here led the efforts. It is Betty and Charles McKinney. They're responsible for getting the whole thing going. I was talking to them. You can see them there most times. And apparently they were able to coordinate all the city and Caltrans and a lot of different entities in order to make this garden happen. And they were able to start this thing out with $250,000, and that's an amazing, in grant money that they got from different entities in the government. And it was amazing considering that, when parks are usually started, we're talking about $3 to $5, maybe even more $1 million just to get a park going online. This is a 3-acre garden, and they were able to start that for $250,000, which is pretty good. Let's take a little tour of the garden here. And this, we're going inside the garden. You notice in the upper right-hand corner we have agave, it looks like Americana, and Parkinsonia, the Palo Verde tree, and other plants. I don't know exactly what those are, but I know what this is. This is a Canary Island native called Pride of Madeira. The scientific name is Echium fastiosum. These are native to Canary Islands, and they're perennial, woody perennials. They can get to be 6 to 8 feet tall. Beautiful spikes of sky blue flowers through a good part of the summer. Here's an interesting ground cover. This is California native grape. And California native grape does make an excellent ground cover. It's very drought tolerant once it's established. And in the summer months, you actually get grapes that are not bad. They're quite edible. When I was a kid, I used to go up into Placerita Canyon. There was one part of one of the tributary canyons that had one of these vines all over the side of it. And in the summer, we'd go there and just munch away on grapes. This here is Arctatus. Arctatus is a native daisy of South Africa. Very good for using in low water use gardens. Very colorful, blooms through a good part of the summer. On the left-hand side, you see Artemisia, and on the right-hand side, Santolina. And the Santolina is looking really good. You see both the green variety and the gray leaf variety of Santolina. Now, I used to sell this when I was working in nurseries, and most people would overwater the dickens out of it, and it wouldn't look this good. One thing you have to remember about Santolina, you got to cut it back at least once a year. Here's a nice use of nasturtiums, and you notice that they are growing around a little water feature there. Nasturtiums actually can go without water for almost a week once they're established. They're actually quite low water use plants. They will look a little yellow, but if you give them a good watering, a really good watering once or twice a week, they will look great. And here is a pathway going through the same garden. You notice the Santolina on the right, and on the left-hand side, those are London plane trees. They are related to the California plane, or the California sycamore. Very close. The difference between these trees and sycamores is they tend to be a little fatter and squatter and provide more shade. And this, I do believe, is either an Artemisia or it may be a fleabane. I am not sure. An erigeron. Beautiful white foliage there. You'll see these all over the place, probably part of a wildflower seed mixture or scattered by themselves. These are Papaver. They are native to Europe. They're also known as the battlefield poppy, and the reason they're known as the battlefield poppy is that they love disturbed earth. And after World War I, well, there was a lot of disturbed earth. The next season after a battle, these would be coming up all over the battlefield. And they've been adopted by various veterans groups as an official flower, including the veterans here and in Canada. Here's a close-up of that same poppy, also known as Flanders field poppy or corn poppy. And if you get tired of looking at plants, you can meander the labyrinth. This is not a maze. It doesn't give you a choice where to go. You just gently meander in and out of it. Now, let me go to some of the questions I got during the week. These are questions I was going to do yesterday, but we had some problems with the broadcast. Looks like we're doing pretty good in the broadcast right now. I better knock on wood here. I had a question about the Mexican bird of paradise, Caesalpina pulchrima, or also known as Point Siena, and I was asked whether it would do well on the west side, for one, and two, if it was poisonous. Well, on the west side, it should do okay. It does like a lot more heat and light than it normally gets on the west side, so you may see a delay in blooming. You may see some occasional mildew on the leaves, but other than that, it should do okay. Remember not to water it too frequently once it's established. And also, it is poisonous, so if you have dogs or children, probably not a good idea to plant it. Here's a close-up of the Caesalpina chelicei, yellow bird of paradise, which is very closely related to the Mexican bird of paradise. Mexican bird of paradise, by the way, is native not only to Mexico, but also the Caribbean as well. Another question I had, and I'll read it here. I have a huge sago palm in my front yard that bloomed a couple of months ago. There are hundreds of orange seed pods in the center and hairy golden protrusions surrounding them. Should I clear out these pods? Are they viable if I plant them? Would anybody be interested in them as a giveaway? Well, as far as are they viable? Yeah, they're viable. If you plant them in containers, bury them in cactus mix, small 2 to 4 inch containers, and keep them in a greenhouse, they will sprout and bloom. You'll have cycads. The problem is, if you don't know exactly what that cycad is, or if it's one of the more common varieties like Cycas recoluta, you'll have a hard time selling them. And still might be able to do it. People used to make a few extra bucks here and there back in the 60s and 70s germinating cycad seeds and selling them. Most people these days, landscapers and gardeners, don't like to deal with, unless they know them, don't like to deal with plants that are sold from unknown vendors. It's not a good idea to do that either. If you are going down the street and somebody's got a bunch of plants on the side, you don't know if the soil in that plant has diseases. You don't know if those plants were grown in a greenhouse and never hardened off, so you take them into your house or you take them wherever and they perish. There's a lot of unknowns. That's why it's a good idea to go with an established nursery or established wholesaler that you know. The other question he had was about the can you plant them? Would anybody interested in them as giveaway? Now, one thing you got to notice about cycads in general, and especially the pods, the covering of the pods is very toxic. The seeds, I'm sorry, the seed covering. Those pods are containing seeds. The covering is very toxic. The leaves and green parts of most cycads are toxic, and the seeds of most cycads are toxic. And if they aren't, they usually require, they're toxic to begin with, and they require some kind of leaching to get the toxins out. So I would suggest, if you are going to clean up the seeds and plant them, that you would use gloves and be careful where all that stuff goes. And also, if you have pets and you're doing this, be really careful as well. It doesn't seem to affect squirrels. I've seen squirrels eat these things and nothing happens to them. But I don't know about dogs. I think dogs, I do know about dogs and cats. There have been many reports of poisonings with dogs and cats on these. So be careful, and also children as well. It's a very poisonous plant, especially the seed coat, so be very careful. Another question. This question is about bamboo, and the question is, my question is regarding bamboo, timbered bamboo, in particular the clumping kind. If the top part is cut off to right above the joint, say the top 20 feet of a 50-foot tall bamboo, will the bottom portion die? And the answer is yes. But what will happen usually is before it dies, it'll push up a lot of new shoots, and they call them culms, and you'll kind of lose the roar unless you keep cutting them back. And if you do keep cutting them back, you'll eventually kill off the whole plant. So no, you can't keep bamboo lower than it normally grows. The key is to buy low-growing varieties of bamboo. And where you go to find these low-growing varieties, you go to great bamboo supplier websites like Bamboo Sorcery, which is located in Sebastopol. If you go to their website, put Bamboo Source, S-O-U-R-S-E-R-Y. And also Bamboo Headquarters here near Vista, which is the closest here to Southern California. are two of the growers that I know of that have very informational websites that allow you to select bamboo that's perfect for your condition, for what you're working on. I also got in yesterday a bunch of neat leaves here. I'm just going to go over them. Gentleman came in, all kinds of problems. Okay, right here, look at the distortion on this leaf. The distortion on this leaf. He said a lot of his plants are doing this. And I couldn't figure out exactly what was going on, although there has been some Roundup spraying. And Roundup, if you get any drift when you're spraying, if you have like a 10 to 20 mile per hour breeze and it hits your stream of Roundup as you're spraying it, there's a possibility that that drift could go up to 100 feet and affect plants. Now, roses are very sensitive to this. They will turn out to be these very spider-like distorted leaves will come off of them once they're affected by Roundup. And the interesting thing about this is you don't see this until just about the next year, you don't, or later on when the buds break. It happens when the buds are affected by Roundup. So you could be spraying Roundup around dormant roses and get this problem with the roses later on when they germinate, when the buds break on them. So it's a very good idea when you're working with Roundup to be extremely careful with it. Spray as close as you can. Make sure you don't spray on a windy day. Spray early in the morning when there's less wind. He also brought in some tomato problems. Wasn't able to elucidate exactly what was going on, but there's a couple of things that are with tomatoes you have to know that affects them. One is they're pretty virus sensitive, and so you want to go with plants that are not prone to viruses, especially if you have any smokers in the house. If you have smokers in the house and you're going to grow tomatoes, make sure you get tobacco mosaic resistant plants. And most of those are, unfortunately, the heirloom variety of tomatoes, which everybody loves these days, are not very resistant to that tobacco mosaic, so you have to get some of the old standards like Better Boy, Early Girl, Ace, and Beefmaster, and make sure that they have the TMV label on them, or the T label, which means they're resistant to tobacco mosaic virus. There's another virus that affects them you can't do much about called curly top, and that turns them purple and curly. This might be curly top. Either which way, you got to tear out the plant, start over again. There's another thing that might be going on too, and that is that we might be looking at this. This is a very cold season. It might just be very, too cool for it right now. A lot of people with tomatoes right now, are not getting any tomatoes, or they're getting very few tomatoes, and that's because it's too cool. You need constant night temperatures above 68 degrees to get good tomato set, and guess what? Our night temperatures are in the low 60s and high 50s. And until this cold June gloom breaks, a lot of these tomatoes aren't going to be doing much. Now, you can help these plants along by increasing the germination, or the pollination rate. And to do that, you get yourself some kind of buzzing vibrator. A really good one would be a toothbrush, an electric toothbrush. Touch the electric toothbrush as it's vibrating to the flowers to vibrate them, and a lot of times that will get them pollinated. What happens also when it's cool like this is a lot of the insects that pollinate these things aren't around because it's too cool. And so you have to help them along by using your little toothbrush, your electric toothbrush, vibrating the blossoms and getting them pollinated. They're self-fertile, but they need some kind of either wind or insect interaction to really pollinate them. So it's just a bad year for tomatoes to begin with, as far as the weather goes, unless you have early girls, which should be giving you all kinds of tomatoes right now. And you just kind of have to wait this out. And again, try the electric toothbrush method of pollinating the flowers. Now this here is a rose bush, and that is a rose virus. This is classic viral signs, and you get more virus showing up when you have two conditions going on. with this cool weather, when it slows the plant growth down. The slower the plant growth, the more the virus can catch up with the growing tip. Now the growing tip of these things, you call that a meristem, is free of the virus, but the virus is present in the older cells, and the virus kind of moves through those older cells to infest the plant. One of the ways, in fact, they get rid of virus in plants is they grow it really fast. They what's called etiolate it in warm, dark greenhouses, and this will get rid of the virus. They call that indexing. Well, when you have cold weather like this, the virus kind of has an upper hand. Also, this rose has not been fed yet. Now, it's not a good idea to feed your roses in this kind of weather. You'll get a lot of mildew, but sometimes if you're getting a lot of virus, you might want to give them a little jolt just to get past the viral growth. This is not going to really affect the rose too much. You'll see this on roses and they'll be blooming just fine. And it rarely spreads from rose to rose, because most of the time this is spread through rootstock roses. When it's grafted, when the desirable variety is grafted to the rootstock variety sometimes has a virus, and then that grafted variety gets the virus. It very rarely travels to other roses, but it can if there's underground root grafts, which can occur with some rose varieties. Now, before I go, I just got to show you a couple of neat pictures I took about 2 months back. This bird, which I don't know what this bird is, was at the Arboretum. It's got the wildest red eyes. Look at that. In the back of its head, it's got this ponytail coming out. If anybody knows what that bird is, if you could email me at frank.mcdonough@arboretum.org, frank.mcdonough@arboretum.org, that would be fantastic. Also, I was taking some pictures at the Arboretum, and somebody was feeding something, and up along come a swarm of these. Yep, a swarm of carp. Look at that. That's very frightening. We have a lot of carp in our waters here, and they tend to swarm. If you're throwing food in the lake, which I do not recommend, throwing food at feeding all the wildlife here increases the amount of waste. It's not good for the wildlife if you feed them, especially bread. Very bad for a lot of the wildlife. And it increases the amount of nitrogen in the water, because they poop most of that stuff out. And when it does that, you get these huge blooms of algae. And sometimes those algal blooms can be fatal to fish and wildlife. So please do not feed the animals here. Well, that's it for today here at the Questionable Botanist. Thank you for watching. We'll be on next week, Tuesday, at 4 o'clock live, and